understanding, and example. Queen Elizabeth was a life well lived, a promise with destiny kept, and she is mourned most deeply in her passing. That promise of lifelong service I renew to you all today. Alongside the personal grief that all my family are feeling, we also share with so many of you in the United Kingdom, in all the countries where the Queen was head of state, in the Commonwealth and across the world, a deep sense of gratitude for the more than 70 years in which my mother, as Queen, served the people of so many nations. In 1947, on her 21st birthday, she pledged in a broadcast from Cape Town to the Commonwealth to devote her life, whether it be short or long, to the service of her peoples. That was more than a promise. It was a profound personal commitment which defined her whole life. She made sacrifices for duty. Her dedication and devotion as sovereign never wavered through times of change and progress, through times of joy and celebration, and through times of sadness and loss. In her life of service, we saw that abiding love of tradition, together with that fearless embrace of progress, which makes us great as nations. The affection, admiration, and respect she inspired became the hallmark of her reign. And as every member of my family can testify, she combined these qualities with warmth, humor, and an unerring ability always to see the best in people. I pay tribute to my mother's memory, and I honor her life of service. I know that her death brings great sadness to so many of you, and I share that sense of loss beyond measure with you all. When the Queen came to the throne, Britain and the world were still coping with the privations and aftermath of the Second World War, and still living by the conventions of earlier times. In the course of the last 70 years, we have seen our society become one of many cultures and many faiths. The institutions of the state have changed in turn. But through all changes and challenges, our nation and the wider family of realms, of whose talents, traditions, and achievements I am so inexpressibly proud, have prospered and flourished. Our values have remained and must remain constant. The role and the duties of monarchy also remain, as does the sovereign's particular relationship and responsibility towards the Church of England, the church in which my own faith is so deeply rooted. In that faith and the values it inspires, I have been brought up to cherish a sense of duty to others and to hold in the greatest respect the precious traditions, freedoms, and responsibilities of our unique history and our system of parliamentary government. As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. And wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, or in the realms and territories across the world, and whatever may be your background or beliefs, I shall endeavor to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love, as I have throughout my life. My life will, of course, change as I take up my new responsibilities. It will no longer be possible for me to give so much of my time and energies to the charities and issues for which I care so deeply. But I know this important work will go on in the trusted hands of others. This is also a time of change for my family. I count on the loving help of my darling wife, Camilla. In recognition of her own loyal public service since our marriage 17 years ago, she becomes my Queen Consort. I know she will bring to the demands of her new role the steadfast devotion to duty on which I have come to rely so much. As my heir, William now assumes the Scottish titles which have meant so much to me. He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall and takes on the responsibilities for the Duchy of Cornwall, which I have undertaken for more than 5 decades. Today, I am proud to create him Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru, the country whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear during so much of my life and duty. With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the centre ground where vital help can be given. I want also to express my love for Harry and Meghan as they continue to build their lives overseas. In a little over a week's time, we will come together as a nation, as a Commonwealth, and indeed a global community, to lay my beloved mother to rest. In our sorrow, let us remember and draw strength from the light of her example. On behalf of all my family, I can only offer the most sincere and heartfelt thanks for your condolences and support. They mean more to me than I can ever possibly express. And to my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you. Thank you for your love and devotion to our family and to the family of nations you have served so diligently all these years. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
That was the national speech there from London, from King Charles III, as you were just listening. Now I'm going to be introducing our guests for you, our correspondent who you heard from a little bit earlier, Hamda Salhout, as well Professor Anat Skoltanov, who joins me in the studio here. She's the Professor of Public Law from the University of Winchester in the UK. And also we've got on the line for us all the way from London, joining us, writer and political commentator Adam Schwartz. So let's start with Professor Anat in the studio here with me. As you just heard the King's speech there, he spoke about the Queen's dedication as sovereign throughout her lifetime, how she never wavered during all of these times under any circumstances. How symbolic is the monarchy now going forward since her death?
Well, obviously there's an important symbolic aspect to the monarchy, but I would say it's more than that. It's a constitutional monarchy, and that's something that we heard in the speech just now. So the King mentioned the parliamentary government as the system, and as well he mentioned the constitutional role and tradition. So in fact, and I think that's something maybe that is not widely realized, the monarch of the United Kingdom actually holds in law a lot of power. It's not merely a figurehead or a symbolic role. In law, has very many powers, including the decision to appoint the prime minister, the decision whether to give the royal assent to legislation. So indeed wields quite a lot of power, but that power will only be practiced in a constitutional manner, and that's something that, as we maybe expected, the new king has expressed as well. So I would definitely not say it's a merely symbolic role, and that leads also to maybe to further questions. One, and which maybe he hinted a little bit in his speech, whether the character of the monarchy will change somewhat under the new king, and the other question, whether there is even any possibility or wish in the United Kingdom for the system of government to change from a monarchy to a republic, and that's something that might also be raised on such a day. So I'll maybe turn to the first of these, and this is something that he hinted at. Maybe he talked a lot about tradition, but I also caught sort of a hint there when he talked about the United Kingdom today is a multicultural society. That's something he's talked about in the past as well. We have to remember that the monarch is the defender of the faith, i.e. the Protestant faith, and he will in the Council of Accession tomorrow be making that affirmation that he is indeed of the Protestant faith and will be head of the Church of England. But maybe that's something that he wants to change slightly the character of that in view of the more multicultural society in the United Kingdom today.
Well, crossing to you, Adam, over there from London, what did you think about some of that speech? What's your take on what was just said by the King?
Well, I think firstly, on a personal level, I think anyone can empathise with a son having to speak about their mother only a day after she passed in front of an entire nation and indeed the whole world. Having watched the speech, I think I would probably break it down to three main themes that Charles really thought to indicate. I think the first is that he really wanted to, of course, pay tribute to his mother, the Queen. I think in doing so, he really was able to sort of connect with the wider British public in this very traumatic time. I think that's something you saw earlier as well, as you can see when he was meeting crowds outside Buckingham Palace. I think the second thing that he did was to provide a sense of continuity and stability. Now, of course, the system is very clear, and Charles took over the throne the moment his mother passed away. But I think it's still so important that the British public saw a sort of visible sense of continuity, particularly in the time when, you know, the government as well has changed with UK's new Prime Minister this week. And thirdly, I think what Charles was trying to do was trying to sort of convey a sense of what kind of king he will be. He's quite an unusual king in the sense that he takes the throne at the age of 73. And that's the oldest that anyone has ever taken to the throne in the UK. And indeed, he's been the longest heir in British history. And the consequence of that has meant that actually the British public already have a sense of what Charles, Prince of Wales, is like, but they don't necessarily have a sense of what Charles, the King, will be like. And I think, you know, the fact that he referenced the fact that his roles will change and we won't be able to devote as much of his time to various aspects such as his charity work really indicates an acknowledgement that actually he's going to have to change his style quite a bit. But what I would say would be that, you know, the main challenge for Charles, you know, as he sort of takes his role as the king, will really to be maintain the relevance of the monarchy in the 21st century in a modern democracy that the UK is. I think he's going to have quite a lot of pressure to do so, particularly from younger members of his family, mostly from the newly created Prince of Wales, Prince William, who will really want to make sure that actually during Charles's reign, actually the royal family maintains that popularity that it had when Queen Elizabeth had her reign. So I think it's going to be quite a difficult task, but naturally, every single monarch has the responsibility to take forward the royal family and the position and really make it their own in a way that's relevant to the modern democracy that the UK is.
Thanks, Adam. Well, on to Hamda now in the field there. Hamda, as you just heard, the King spoke about his Prince Harry and Prince William. He also said that it's a time of change for the royal family as well, including his wife Camilla, and that William now assumes the title of Prince of Wales. Prince Harry and Prince William have also been relatively quiet, though, since the news broke out about their grandmother. Are we expecting to hear more from them, do you think?
Well, we could definitely expect to hear more from them as Prince William now ascends to this new title. We also know that Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, have been layered in controversy with the royal family, and we do know that they released a sort of bombshell interview a few years back after leaving the royal family. But in a situation like this, it is hard to imagine that they will not release words when it comes to the death of the Queen. We also need to keep in mind that King Charles's popularity is not as great as his mother's. We do understand royal commentators are saying that he will be met with a lot less enthusiasm. Polls taken just in May of this year said he had about a 56% approval rating, and that is behind the Queen's at 81%, where his son, now the first heir to the throne, coming in with 77% approval rating. So a lot on the hands of this new king, and a lot on the hands of his children, the next heirs to the throne.
Well, Anat, back in the studio here, speaking of approvals, as Hamda just touched on that, how will the King deal with all of this and his relationship? What's it going to be with the Commonwealth going forward?
Yes, so I think that's important because, of course, he's not just the head of state of the United Kingdom, but in fact of 15 other states. As has been the case in the United Kingdom, he becomes immediately the head of state in all these other states, such as Australia, New Zealand, Canada, various Caribbean states. Now, regardless of the personal approval rating of Charles, I think that in the United Kingdom there is generally a wish to retain the monarchy, but that might not be the case in the other states in which he is head of state, in some of these Commonwealth states. So just last year we've seen Barbados decide to become a republic and no longer have the Queen, or now King of England, as head of state. Maybe Jamaica may or may not follow that, and that might be a time of reckoning for some of these other states as well, where having the English monarch as head of state is also some relic of empire, of colonialism that they might be trying to shake away. In a state like Australia, that's obviously the considerations are somewhat different. Again, several years ago, there was a question of whether to become a republic or not. That was defeated in a small majority. So I think it will be interesting to see what happens in these states. As I said, in all these states, he immediately becomes king. Nothing else needs to be done. Doesn't matter when he's actually crowned, which might be a few months even down the line, but there still might be a time of reckoning in these states, and it will be definitely interesting to see if there are any constitutional changes there.
Adam, over in London, so obviously this has triggered a series of ceremonial and constitutional steps. What role do you think William will now play?
Well, I think, there's no really a set constitutional role for the heir, other than obviously to ultimately support the monarch in their role and, of course, eventually a seat to the throne. But I think that very much depends on really what he himself will see the role to be, and also what Charles will want him to do. I think partly he will have to take on some of the responsibilities that Charles will leave behind. The fact that he's no longer, in his previous title, will naturally pass some responsibilities to William. But I think what William will try to do will be to build on his existing work that he's already achieved in his sort of previous role when, the Queen has been around for the past 30 years. And I think he's had a really, really important role in trying to sort of modernize the image of the royal family. And I think to some extent, there's only so much that, King Charles can do that on his own. I think he will really need the support of Prince William to do that. And I think Prince William has really looked into lots of different areas that were perhaps previously looked as taboo in the royal family, or indeed the wider society. He's talked quite widely about his mental health struggles, as has Prince Harry, following the death of of their mother. So I think that's something that they will build on. But of course, I think as we see, just we saw the Queen age and Charles eventually take on more responsibilities, I think we will also see Prince William over time, over the next few decades perhaps, take on more responsibilities, sort of in preparation for that role. I think the fact that William is no longer, two places away from from being king rather than just one, I think really will be quite an important change in his perspective, and really it'll be a much more vivid concept that he will one day be king. So I think we're going to see his role change, but ultimately build on what he's already been doing in his previous role.
And turning to Hamda in the field now. So Hamda, obviously we know that there's still going to be some processes left in this, like the state funeral for the Queen and also the 10-day national mourning period. At what point, though, will the world turn from mourning to celebration?
Well, we do understand that just today, Buckingham Palace announced that the royal period of mourning will be observed from now until 7 days after her funeral, making it actually a total of 17 days of mourning until after the Queen is laid to rest. But we can expect celebrations when the new king has his coronation. The United Kingdom will still be mourning, though, because the Queen was very beloved. And as I mentioned earlier, she was popular with more than 3/4 of the country. More than 3/4 of the United Kingdom approved of her leadership and her reign. So the 10 days of mourning, the 7 days after that, and then perhaps we can see the United Kingdom's spirits lift when the new king has his formal coronation.
Back in the studio now, and Professor Anat, what do you think, what other states will the king be head of, in your opinion?
Well, as I said, he immediately becomes head of all these 15 states, but we might see in some of them wish to become republics following, as I mentioned, last year, Barbados. But I think we can ask in the United Kingdom, are there going to be any constitutional changes? There, again, is nothing immediate that will be changed, but it could be that the character of the monarchy will change. For example, we know that other European royal houses are much more scaled back in terms of the number of members who are royals, and that might be something that the United Kingdom might move to as well. So we could see some constitutional changes, although none that arise immediately. I think, again, going back to the point that was made about King Charles and his perception maybe in the public eye, he has definitely been more outspoken on public issues than his mother, the Queen Elizabeth II. And it's a question whether that will be the case as well when he is monarch. So the idea of a constitutional monarchy, the way the Queen has seen her role, is to really be out of the public eye, be seen as very neutral, not take a position on public issues, and that has maybe led to her success as a constitutional monarch. It's a question whether that will somewhat change under King Charles or not. Obviously, he's in a different role now, but it does seem to be the case that he has some viewpoints on public issues. Maybe that's contentious as well, and of course the minute he expresses views, there are opposing views as well. So of course we still do not expect him to be part of the political process that would be undermining the constitutional monarchy, but it might change to some extent.
Professor Anat, thank you so much. I just want to thank all our guests. Professor Anat, firstly, in the studio with me here. Anat Skolkanov, Professor of Public Law from the University of Winchester in the UK. Hamda Salhout in the field for us, our correspondent, and Adam Schwartz from London, writer and political commentator. Well, moving on now.